Another way of approaching the issue of animal morality can be found in utilitarianism. And this is part 3 of our module on animals and morality. And last time, or in the previous segment, we talked about how Kant might approach the issue of animal morality. But the utilitarians approach it quite differently. Utilitarians focus not on intelligence or rationality as the basis of moral consideration, but focus instead on whether or not a being is capable of suffering. If it is, then it does warrant ethical consideration. And this is an argument made by one of the original utilitarians, Jeremy Bentham, as he wrote, "Other animals, which, on account of their interests having been neglected by the insensibility of the ancient jurists, stand degraded into the class of things. The day has been, I grieve it to say, in many places it is not yet past, in which the greater part of the species, under the denomination of slaves, have been treated upon the same footing as humans are still. The day may come when the rest of animal creation may acquire those rights which never could have been withholden from them but by the hand of tyranny. The French have already discovered that the blackness of skin is no reason why a human being should be abandoned without redress to the caprice of a tormentor. It may come one day to be recognized that the number of legs, the velocity of the skin, or the termination of the os sacrum are reasons equally insufficient for abandoning a sensitive being to the same fate." So what's Bentham is saying here is that the way that people treat animals is similar to the way that people might treat slaves or women or other racial or gender minorities in previous time periods. Now, some may find the comparison helpful. Some may find it insulting to compare the plight of animals to the plight of human beings. Some think that doing so reduces really the suffering of human beings in the comparison. But some find the comparison apt. And what Bentham is saying is that, in the past we thought that visible differences were credible sorts of differences, and that we could apportion rights and responsibilities according to them. But we've come to realize that we cannot do so with human beings. Perhaps the same thinking will one day extend to animals as well. Bentham's reasoning forms the basis for the theory put forth by contemporary utilitarian Peter Singer, who claims that the capacity for suffering is what warrants consideration of animal interests. In his book Animal Liberation, contemporary utilitarian Peter Singer argues that equality applies to humans as well as animals, but that equal consideration does not mean equal treatment. For Singer, what makes animals deserving of moral consideration is not their intelligence or aptitude, but their ability to suffer. He argues that our inattentiveness to animal suffering constitutes a form of speciesism, a prejudice on a par with sexism and racism. Singer argues that our eating habits and our practices of animal experimentation are morally wrong. Singer begins by examining the indefensibility of sexism and racism. He says, "Although humans differ as individuals, there are no difference between races and sexes as such. From the mere fact that a person is black or a woman, we cannot infer anything about that person's intellectual or moral capacities. This, it may be said, is why sexism and racism are wrong." So sexism and racism are wrong precisely because they are not informative concepts. Similarly, an animal, by appearance, is different from us, but maybe apportioning rights, responsibilities, duties, according to appearances between species is just another dangerous ism. like sexism and racism. So, in other words, restricting liberty or according less status to a person on the basis of their sex or race is wrong, and if there are inequalities in ability across races or sexes, as there are, this is nevertheless not a defensible basis for political or moral inequality. He says, the claim to equality does not depend on intelligence, moral capacity, physical strength, or similar matters of fact. Equality is a moral idea, not an assertion of fact. There is no logically compelling reason for assuming that a factual difference in ability between two people justifies any difference in the amount of consideration we give to their needs and interests. The principle of equality of human beings is not a description of an alleged actual equality among humans. It is a prescription of how we should treat humans. In other words, we uphold the principle of equality for human beings not because human beings are equal, because we aren't. Everyone has talents, abilities, strengths, and weaknesses that other people don't have. We are not equal. Yet, we deserve equal consideration as part of our principles of justice, as part of our principles of morality, regardless of whether or not we're smart, fast, strong, beautiful, etc. Since that is the case, why should we make animals not party to that principle of justice? Thus is Singer's reasoning. Let's see. Jeremy Bentham, progenitor of the hedonistic calculus, asserted that each person is to count for one and for no more than one. The interests of one being are to be given equal consideration to that of any other being, regardless of their endowments or handicaps. An implication of this principle, as an implication of this principle, we are to show concern for others on the basis of how they are affected by what we do. He says, concern for the well-being of a child, Singer, rather, says that concern for the well-being of a child growing up in America would require that we teach him to read. Concern for the well-being of a pig may require no more than that we leave him alone with other pigs in a place where there is adequate room and food and room to run freely. But the basic element, the taking into account of the interests of the being, whatever those interests may be, must, according to the principle of equality, be extended to all things, black or white, masculine or feminine, human or non-human.